Hey folks, this is Mike from KEI Fabrication. This is my LS swapped Mazda B2200. If you're new to my channel, go back and check out some of the modifications we've done to this to make it a road racer, a circle track racer, and a drag racer. It's in the process of undergoing some more transformations. You'll see updates on that soon. Okay folks, while I have the truck all torn apart, I am going to start to figure out what to do about a cold air intake. While I had the truck apart, I drilled some additional holes where the battery used to be, because my air cleaner used to be kind of at an angle down inside here. You can see I have a couple of holes drilled there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this more horizontal. I'm going to actually drill, or not drill, but I'm going to cut away a portion of this inner fender well and extend the filter out into the fender. First of all, that should allow access to the air cleaner from underneath. Well, the opportunity to throw a bunch of rain at it is going to be minimized because the grill and marker light assembly is here and the bumper corner goes on right here. The tire splash is going to be prevented from the inner fender well. So between the additional holes that I've drilled and the ones that were pre-existed behind the headlight, I think that'll provide plenty of opportunity for air to get in. By making this air cleaner, instead of being at an angle like this and making it more horizontal, first of all, I should be able to get my fresh air box flush with the inner fender well that comes down here, which will make attaching it easier. Just make it easier to fabricate a fresh air box. So that's my plan. Obviously, whether I'm successful or not remains to be determined. So here we go. Alright folks, you're at the top secret CAD bench, cardboard aided design bench, and took some measurements of the airbox, and I'm going to lay out something that'll eventually fabricate out of some aluminum. And this is just one flange that the pass-through for air cleaner duct is going to go through this bulkhead, if you will, that's going to separate the hot engine from the beginning of the airbox. So the engine's on this side, the fender is this way, and the air cleaner, or the cone, will be in this direction. So, according to my measurements, I should come up 5.5 inches in this direction and over 5.5 inches in this direction, and where those 2 points meet is basically the bottom of the circle. So let me take one more measurement in this direction so I can get a parallel. So these are just lines that'll end up being tangent with the bottom and with the left side of the duct. This is eventually going to be here. So my goal is to have the bottom half of this stationary and have a flange. Let's say if this is the center line of the circle, have a flange that sticks up. So the bottom half will be stationary. There'll be a top half to this that is removable, and that'll allow me to get the air cleaner off. I am going to use this as an edge to bend and attach the next portion of the airbox to head in that direction towards the fender. I need some additional material on the bottom here to act as a flange to mount it to the bottom of where the battery used to be, the bottom of the inner fender well. Alright folks, so I already realized first incorrect measurement, and this circle here, I originally had said 5.5 inches to the tangent line, but it really was 5.5 inches to the center. And I drew a new arc here. And then I was able to get some material to add for a flange. It's going to happen later on. So step one is to trim away the material that I don't need, and then I'm going to go over to the little bending brake over there and use that to make some bends in the cardboard. So there's the beginning of it, that vertical wall. And then I'm going to make the horizontal piece that goes from here over to the fender. It should be just a straight. That's what's next. I got some clecos in there, so when I make the aluminum piece, if I put the holes in exactly the right spot, we should be in good shape. Alright folks, there's the cardboard aided design version. The cover, my intention is to just have the cover with some bolts sticking through this way, and same thing with the back, and just have some wing nuts on them or whatever, and just remove the cover, and the filter will be inside. Get my so the box looks fairly small, but a third of the filter sticks outside the fender over there, so this see if that'll stay there. So this flange will be pop riveted to the inner fender well, and the theory is that this top half will be removable either with some wing nutted bolts and some slip over flanges down below, so the filter assembly will come out without an issue. I think if I remove just a little bit of this flange, the filter will come out of there without too much of a struggle. See how it's catching on that flange. So the simple way would be able to make all this so it was stationary and not removable, and only having the lid removable. You know, that'll capture the air from behind the headlight, from over here at the wheel opening and the holes that I drilled in below the bumper and up underneath. So anyway, I'm kind of happy that I got this far. Now I just need to find enough aluminum or some other material to make this so it's not 1,000,000 pounds. Fairly easy to work with. Alright folks, I am trying to make the airbox out of two pieces, basically the cover and then what you see here. I chose to use this sheet of black plastic roll from the Circle Track industry. I purchased this for a couple of reasons. Actually, one of them was with the intention of doing this. I thought of making this out of aluminum. The only thing I could find sitting around was some of these street signs that I had. No, they're not stolen. They were taken out of service by the local municipality. And the type, there's two reasons why I'm not using that aluminum. The type of aluminum that those signs are made out of is hardened, and it's very difficult to bend. The other thing is, it's not a rat rod, and I really didn't want to have the street sign as part of my airbox. So what I've done is I taped it down so it didn't move around on me, and then because this is black, it's difficult to get some sort of mark to follow when you cut it out. So what I've done is I've used my scribe tool, which is really a tungsten sharpening tool with a tungsten in it. It's probably the best scribe tool that I've ever had for scribing onto metals, and it's really easy to sharpen by sticking it in the cordless drill and putting it on the belt sander. So I'm going to save my template in case this doesn't work out, and I can always put it into use for my next material choice. I'll have to either go to the scrap yard and try and find a piece. So what I did was, because I taped it in position where this hole was, I'm just finding the existing scribe lines that I was able to put in place, and I'm just putting them back in place. The other thing that's real nice about this, as you saw when I cut this out, the sheet metal shear cuts this really, really nicely. Sometimes you do get a little slippage in the wheels that counter rotate, but just with a little pressure forcing it ahead, it zips right through it, so it makes it really nice. You can see I've got my heat gun out in order to get this to lay flat because it was rolled up in that tight roll for a long period of time. I just gave it a little bit of heat, rolled it in the opposite direction, and it laid fairly flat. So the wrestling aspect of that is gone. So now I'm going to use my tin snips to cut it out. I have a question for you folks. Obviously the tin snips are, these particular examples are left hand and right hand. How many of you thought left hand and right hand was to use it in the hand that you were predominantly used, if you were left-handed or right-handed? I honestly, up until I actually went to work as an apprentice for somebody, thought that. My dad had these laying around the house all the time, and I used to use them as a kid, little hobby projects, and I thought left-handed meant it was intended for people who were left-handed and right-handed. Not until after did I realize that it was for the direction that you were cutting, or that the material was peeling off the blade. So anyway, be honest with me folks, how many of you thought left hand and right hand meant for which was your dominant hand? So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and cut this out, and I have a bend line established here, as well as the bend lines on the flanges that I'm going to utilize. I'm going to take a test strip of this and put it in my little press brake over there and try to figure out the best way to bend this. I don't know if I should be scribing this and then bending it, or using a heat gun to bend it so after you bend it, it holds its shape. I'll figure that out. We'll learn together. Okay, I know you folks can't see my scribe lines clearly because they're just scratches in this black material. Extremely difficult to pick up on camera, I'm sure. Plus there's a lot of glare going on. Now that I've trimmed away the excess, I've got between 1/4 and 1/8 of an inch all the way around. Now I can go at it with my hand tools and not be wrestling with those big flaps of waste material. Alright folks, it's thundering outside. Most of you probably already know how to use these, but just for a point of information, these are the right-hand ones, and what that means is that it's expected that the waste material is going to curl off of the right side of the cutter. And the same is true with the left-hand cutters. It's expected that the waste material is going to curl off of the left-hand side of the shears. Last thing that I wanted to share with you is you want to utilize like 2/3 of the blade, right? Instead of going all the way to the end. I hope you can see the difference between the two. It not only is on the material that you would like to keep, the little cut marks. On metal it's even worse. So the last thing you want to do is have to create a bunch of extra work for yourself or ruin the part that you're trying to keep by chomping all the way through it so the material is cut all the way to the tip of the shears. So just a point of information. Most of you probably are already aware of that, but if you're not, hopefully you learned something today. So you can see just a very manageable amount of waste material curling right off of the cutters, and it's really easy to manage as opposed to wrestling with that big sheet of waste material. Alright, we're going to see how this stuff bends in this little press brake here. I've got some test pieces before I destroy that nice template and finished piece that I just made. So I'm going to blow this off. I've done a lot of grinding. This is a metal working bench. The last thing I want to do is drive metal into the work or ruin the sharp edges because I've got debris. So one of the issues with this Harbor Freight entry-level bending brake is that even if you use some good clamping tools to hold these things in place, the tendency is when you bend it up, if there's a lot of resistance in the material, is that it pushes this top blade rearward. So I drilled some holes through it, so if I needed more clamping force, I could just spin these down with a wrench. That prevents pushing this rearward when you bend your thing up. So the first test bend that I'm going to do is without scoring the material. So that'll be experiment number 1, and then we'll see how it works out. So believe it or not, there's a fair amount of resistance in this stuff. The spring back doesn't appear to be too bad. So maybe with a little further bending beyond the 100 degrees or so that I'm bending this, it'll be okay. So again, this is the only bending brake that I have for sheet metal type stuff. So there's the bend without scoring the backside. I was a little leery of scoring the backside just because I didn't want it to tear. And this is all cold, I'm not heating it at all. But with a little encouragement, I can bend it and get pretty much the desired bend. Obviously it's flexible material, so you want to make sure that it's not going to be a wrestling match when you go to assemble these pieces all together. So I'm going to score the backside just to see what happens. you know, does it ruin the material and create a tear? You know, that's the whole part of the experimentation. So I'm just scoring it with that scribe tool I told you about, and I'm going to put the bend line down, the scoring line down, just making an indication of where that is on the side that I can see. Line it up accordingly, and let's see how it works out with my bolts as hold downs here. So I'm trying to force it so the memory is there. Let's see what the back side of this looks like. So now again, all I did was scribe a line on it. I didn't cut it with a knife or anything like that. There is a white line in there, like we might have stretched the material. And there is kind of a radius on the outside of this bend, which I like. And here it kind of has a split line right on the bend, which may lead to failure later on. So based on what I'm seeing, I'm going to cold bend it with no scribe line on the outside. I've got a bend line scribed on the inside, which may actually help shrink the material. So let's give that a try real quick, just for another component of our test. So I scribe the line just like I would to identify the bend line. I'll position that with the knife of the bending die. And then we'll see what that bend looks like, and if it has any negative aspects of it. I think it would be better to have the scribe line in terms of integrity on the side that you're trying to shrink the material rather than on the side that you're trying to stretch. So I think that would be true with any material. So I still got initially a little bit of an issue. Still got the radius on the outside. I have to encourage it to bend the rest of the way. But all in all, it's kind of the same result. So I don't think I'm ruining the bend or the product by scribing on the inside of the bend. I do believe that some long-term problems may occur if you scribe it on the outside. So, all right, that's what I'm going to do. Alright, so what I'm going to do is just kind of bend these the rest of the way by hand to get them at the angle that's required to get the job done, and then I'm going to take it over and test fit it in the truck. So, not bad for a prototype. Hey folks, I'm actually kind of encouraged by all of what is taking place here. So you can see that, you know, this is a little bit of bulging out, but there's no rivet up in this corner yet, and there's no flange on here, so it's going to do that anyway. The cover will have a flange on it that'll fasten to this, and it'll pull it all into shape. It's just Clecoed in right now. I've got the Cleco clamp here, and then I've got the Cleco pop rivets down on the bottom and there. So this is something that I'm trying to do, and I actually have to thank Jeremy from Faster Proms for educating me on this. He had indicated that the software that's in the stock computers will actually retard timing based on the air temperature. So in this process, what I'm trying to do is put the mass airflow sensor out here, so it'll be in the coldest area of the engine compartment, and even if it's 20 degrees cooler in here than being over here where it was, there might be a couple of degrees of timing that it's not going to pull, and I'll be able to get, you know, that much more power out of it. So it is kind of a tight fit to get the cone air cleaner, which goes all the way out to here, in, you know, under the fender. It's 1/3 of it is outside in this portion of the under the fender, and 2/3 of it is in here. But the fact that this is flexible, I can get this thing in there, and I just have to pop a hole in it for the air temperature sensor to make it over to here. Or I have a little pass-through for wiring over here. I can just put it in and connect it there. So it's an idea. I figure I might as well try it. And then the dilemma is, do I have enough connections to get my air intake hose hooked back up over here? I've only have a limited amount of factory stock stuff, and then what this aftermarket air cleaner came with for an elbow, and then that short piece of 4-inch tubing. So there may be some additional components that I have to purchase to get everything back connected the way it was. One last thing I'll show you before I start nailing this thing in place is the cover will have a flange on this side and a flange on the back side. And what I'm going to do is have those body clips that slip over this and a hole drilled in here, and I'll just have either a bolt with a wing nut on it or some sort of threaded fastener that screws into it. And if this has a flange on it, it'll pull everything into shape. I'll have 2 here and 2 here. So in order to maintain the air filter, I just have to undo those 4 screws, pull it out, and it'll expose my air filter. So very encouraged. It really worked out nice. I went from having a 3-piece template down to a 1-piece component here. Super, you know, it simplified things dramatically, and with the, you know, having that small bending brake and this material on hand, I really, really like it. So the only other thing I might be able to do to insulate, you know, add some insulation value is maybe put some Dynamat or something like that, and have it adhere to the back side of this. So for now, I'm just interested in isolating this from the engine compartment temp. The amount of air that flows through here should limit the amount of heat that transfers from the outside of this plastic box into the area where the air filter is contained. It can't be any worse than aluminum in terms of thermal transfer or even metal, so hopefully this will act as even more of an insulator than that in terms of heat transfer. So I'm going to actually pop rivet this in place and work on building the cover, and I am looking forward to just crossing this off the list. So it'll be interesting to see how that all works out. I don't have any data as far as inlet air temperatures or anything. prior to. I know I had talked about mounting the mass airflow sensor inside the box to reduce the temperature sensor's reading from under the hood to basically in the cold air. I just couldn't make the connection work. I had to take an elbow that came with this cold air kit that was designed for a Ford F450, chop it out of the bracket it was in, put the fitting in here for my crankcase vacuum, and I had to leave it outside. So someday when I get some more fittings, you know, elbows, connectors, or whatever I need to get that inside, I'll move it in. The long term, obviously this is not a good situation in terms of airflow. What I may try sometime down the road is to get one of those 90-degree elbows and turn the throttle body away from the intake. I don't know, it works okay for now. I'm sure it's soaking some heat from the radiator into that, and it's probably counterproductive in terms of going through all that trouble and then ended up with warm air anyway. But it's a start. It's something I always wanted to do, and now it's done.